Hola chicos, hoy vamos a hablar de las cláusulas adverbiales y se puede encontrar toda esta información en las páginas 295 y 296 en el libro del texto. Necesitas la hoja de apuntes y vamos a empezar. First of all, keep in mind that we're always going to be using the subjunctive mood to describe what may be, what might be, what hasn't happened yet, things that we are uncertain about. That's the whole idea of the subjunctive. Not necessarily that you need to know which clause does what, which conjunction does what, but think about it in terms of whether or not things have happened, or will happen, or may not happen. Because sometimes it will depend on you as the speaker to determine that. We're going to use the indicative to describe things that are, were, will be for sure, etc. There are two different kinds of adverbial clauses. The first one is time. The second one is interdependence. The adverbial clauses, the adverbial conjunctions that we're going to use when we're talking about time indicate actions that either may or may not have happened yet. So, if it's something that hasn't happened yet, as you would assume, we're going to use the subjunctive because we're not sure that it is going to happen. If it's a statement that reflects a habitual action, something that continually goes on and usually goes on, we can describe that with a fair amount of certainty. Therefore, we're going to use the indicative. So let's look at some examples. Here are conjunctions. Cuando, hasta, aunque, después de que, así que, tan pronto como, en cuanto. And here's what they mean. When, until, even though, después de que, and así que, tan pronto como, and en cuanto all mean as soon as. These are all words that have something to do with time, except for aunque, and I'll explain that in just a moment. So, let's look at some examples. Por lo general, lo hago cuando nos levantamos. I usually do it when we get up. That's going to be in the indicative mood because it's something that is usually happening, something that we can say happens with a fair amount of certainty. Lo haré cuando nos levantemos. I'll do it when we get up. Well, we haven't gotten up yet, therefore I can't have done it, so it's going to be subjunctive. Siempre me lavo los dientes después de que comemos. I always brush my teeth after we eat, something that I do all the time. It's habitual. We're going to use indicative for that. Me lavaré los dientes después de que comamos. I'll brush my teeth after we eat. Well, we haven't eaten yet, therefore I can't have brushed my teeth. We're going to use subjunctive. And the last example, los alumnos lo repiten hasta que el profesor está satisfecho. The students will repeat it until the professor is satisfied. Los alumnos lo repetirán hasta que él esté satisfecho. The students will repeat it until he is satisfied. That one's going to be subjunctive because they haven't repeated it yet. So what you'll notice is that in all of the cases where we use the subjunctive, we've used some sort of future in the first clause before the conjunction. That indicates that we need to use subjunctive in the second clause because it's something that hasn't happened yet. Aunque, de modo que, and de manera que are a little bit different. Aunque uses, or it means although, or even though, or even if. And we're going to use the indicative if we are talking about something that is factual, or if the outcome is known. Otherwise, we're going to use the subjunctive. Same thing with de modo que and de manera que, but this is going to depend more on you as the speaker to determine whether or not the action is going to be factual and we're using the indicative, or not factual using the subjunctive. So, lo haré aunque no le gusta, as opposed to lo haré aunque no le guste. It just depends on what you are trying to express when using aunque. Same thing with de modo que and de manera que. If it's something that's already happened, obviously we're going to use the indicative because we can say for certain that has already happened. Ellos estudiaron hasta que sabían todos los verbos. They studied until they knew all the verbs. They studied in the past. They did it until a certain point in the past. Both clauses happen in the past, therefore we can use the indicative. Yo te llamé en cuanto llegué a casa. I called you as soon as I arrived home. Well, I already called you when I arrived home, and they're both in the past, therefore you can use the indicative. Another example, nosotros hicimos la cena en cuanto mamá llegó a casa. We made dinner as soon as mom arrived home. Both actions occurred in the past. There is no uncertainty about that. Okay. So let's talk about interdependence. We're going to use the subjunctive when the main clause and the subordinate clause are interdependent, whereas like one event will not happen unless the other one does too. There's always going to be subjunctive in this case because we're not certain if one action is going to if the second action is going to happen or not. If there's no change in subject, however, we're going to drop the K and just use the infinitive. So, here are your conjunctions. En caso de que, sin que, con tal de que, a menos que, para que, and antes de que. We're always going to use the infinitive when there's no K with these because that happens when we don't change the subject. Te presto dinero con tal de que me lo devuelvas. I'll lend you money, provided that you return it to me. Well, one of those actions is dependent on the other one, therefore we're going to use subjunctive for the second one. Estudio para sacar buenas notas. I'm studying in order to earn good grades. There are not two subjects here, therefore we just need to use the infinitive after para. We drop the K and use the infinitive. Why am I studying? I'm studying so that I can get good grades. Te doy el dinero para que puedes comprar la camisa. Okay, I'm giving you the money. In order for you to buy the shirt, I have to give you the money. That expresses our interdependence. So after para que, we're going to use subjunctive. That's it.